Hello, this is Stephen Van Kampen-Lewis. It is September 7th at about 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Temperatures are about 95, 96 degrees. It's still hot, still very, very hot. But I figured I would talk to you today a little bit about growing bifoliate Cattleyas, and I'm going to focus on Cattleya amethystoglossa. And I'm actually going to compare a two-an plant versus a polyploid plant, and some of the space requirements that are different because, as many of you know, when you have a diploid plant or a two-an plant, they're average sized, whereas a four-an plant or a three-an plant or whatever polyploidy type plant can be larger than normal, and I have found that the Cattleya amethystoglossa is especially large for its polyploid plants. That said, I also want to talk a little bit about sort of the important things for growing this group of Cattleyas, and what to do, what not to do, blah, 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 blah. So let's get started. So first of all, quick introduction to bifoliate Cattleyas. As you could imagine by the name, they typically have two leaves versus unifoliate Cattleyas, which have one leaf. So unifoliate Cattleyas are typically the corsage orchids that you see. A lot of species, Cattleya trini, labiata, doyana, sort of these big floofy Cattleya types are your unifoliates. Your bifoliates are going to be Cattleya amethystoglossa, bicolor, a lot of GZI, and a lot of others that have two leaves, very thin bulbs, as opposed to the large bulbs of a unifoliate Cattleya. And that means that there's some differences in watering as well. So, quick overview. As you can tell by most of my videos, it's always hot. Bifoliates love that. They do just fine. For the most part, there's one or two species that appreciate a little cooler temperatures. And I'm actually growing a few of those right now fairly well, and we'll see how the blooms look when they get a little older. But typically they like lots of heat, lots of sun, lots and lots and lots of sun, very bright conditions, and they appreciate more water than their unifoliate cousins. So the unifoliates have these big thick bulbs, the pseudobulbs, and that's for drought resistance, drought tolerance during the dry season. You'll notice that the bifoliates, I'll get to the actual bifoliates here in a second, but you'll notice that their bulbs are thinner. Kind of, if you can see behind me, I've got my large Cattleya amethystoglossa waiting in the wings there. Those canes is really what they look like, are quite a bit thinner than what you would imagine for a unifoliate or sort of a complex hybrid Cattleya, which means they are much less drought tolerant. Their dry season is much less harsh than, say, a unifoliate Cattleya, which can withstand quite a bit of drying, typically. So high temperatures, plenty of water, fast-draining media. So when I say lots of water, I'm not talking about a phalaenopsis where its roots want to stay wet fairly frequently for long periods of time. I'm saying these guys can't handle a month or several weeks without water. They want to be, I water mine every day. During the summer, I have them in clay pots with large grade orchiata bark, so they're dry pretty quickly. But like I said, they want to get water every day. I've also noticed that the bifoliate Cattleyas are not as seasonal as unifoliates. So unifoliates seem to have, not always, but typically they have a fairly regular pattern of when they're putting out new bulbs. Bifoliate Cattleyas typically, from my experience, will grow a little less in winter, but they're typically growing all year round. If you're giving them water and they have enough warmth, they're going to be putting out new growth, which is great, especially if you have seedlings and stuff and you want them to grow faster into blooming size plant, which is what we all want. A plant that grows all year round as opposed to only in summertime is going to get that much bigger, that much quicker. So, bright sun, warm temperatures, plenty of water, fast-draining media, and maybe the most important part of growing bifoliate Cattleyas is knowing when to repot or when to divide. So, there's a lot of orchids out there that really dislike being repotted. Bifoliate Cattleyas are in that category. They absolutely resent being repotted. So the only time that you want to repot is when those roots are just starting to come out of the new growth. Now this is actually true for all orchids, all Cattleyas. When you see root growth, strong root growth on a new growth, that's typically when you want to repot. But that is way more important for bifoliate Cattleyas. You can kill one of these very quickly simply by repotting, in the middle of a growing season or growing cycle, or during dormancy, or what have you. And even veteran growers like myself will, sometimes make bad mistakes and say, whatever, I can grow this Cattleya, it's not a problem, and cut them up at an inopportune time. And let me show you what happens when you do that. So this is Cattleya leolatoglossa. This is a blue Cattleya, Cerulean Cattleya, sorry, not blue. And this was from a friend of mine. She brought it in for judging 3 years ago, maybe. And I said, ooh, I really want a piece of that. And she said, cool, here, chop, here you go. That was not at the correct time, and I blame myself for saying, yeah, that's great, let's cut this up. This thing has had, so these bulbs should be much taller, sort of like a almost an amethystoglossa size bulb. As you can see, this is one of the old ones that's still there. The new growths are small. It's putting out this weird little flower on this weird small growth. I am not optimistic about how long this is going to live. We'll see. I'm going to give it another growth, and if it doesn't perk up and start making larger bulbs, I guess I'll just toss it. I don't really know what else is wrong. But that's pretty typical of bifoliate Cattleyas. If you cut them at the wrong time, they're going to sulk. And this is a plastic pot. It's not my preferred method. I'm not really sure what I was thinking when I repotted it, but I mean, there's growths. There's roots in there. I don't know if you can see that or not. So it's been 3 years. It's got great root growth. It's just, I guess, repotting it at the wrong time of year was really brutal for this thing, and B, maybe there's some other part of my culture that it's not liking. I don't know what that would be. All my other bifoliates, and I've got a lot, all my other bifoliates are doing great. They're in clay pots though. That could be the main difference, but I'm pretty sure that repotting at the most inopportune time was a bad idea. Now, to the Cattleya amethystoglossas. So, before I sort of start comparing 2N versus polyploid plants, I want to show you what. So this is, and you can see these new roots coming out here. This is 1/2 of a plant that I chopped up and sent to a friend in Indiana. I love trading plants. To me, buying high quality seedlings, growing them up, and then trading for other mature divisions is a really great way to improve your collection and get really nice plants, line bred plants, basically for free or for very inexpensive. If you take the time to take a high quality line bred plant from a very good breeder, you grow it to a certain size, you start chopping up, and you're going to get something in return of equal value, right? So improving your collection on a budget, that's how I do it. I don't have a whole lot of money, but improving your collection on budget comes in many times from trading good divisions for other good divisions. So that said, this is an absolutely beautiful amethystoglossa. I got this from Olom Poly Orchids in California. Sergio Garcia is the owner and breeder, and he gave me this some years ago when he was here. Excuse me, I bought it from him and it has these very pale colored flowers, almost a white background with your typical pink amethystoglossa spots and pink amethystoglossa lip. It's absolutely outstanding. Palinha by Palha, I think is the cross. Anyway, I chopped this up, and the friend that I sent this to said, hey, he's also a bifoliate grower. He says, hey, I'm going to send you this plant in the spring. When your amethystoglossa starts to put out roots, that's when I want you to chop it up and send it to me, which is exactly what I did. So that happened about 2 weeks ago, I would say. And you can see 2 weeks ago is when those roots were just poking out. The moment I saw that first root, I went in there, cut it up, and I sent it off to Indiana, and I repotted it here because that is the exact perfect time. Repotting now is still okay. I don't like potting when the roots are even this long, just because you're going to break some. I much prefer to wait, observe, and then pull that trigger right away the moment you see those new roots coming out. So like I said, this would even be too late for my preference. There are worse times to repot than this, certainly. So I expect this one should bloom this spring, hopefully on 2 spikes. I've got another growth coming in here, so maybe 3 spikes this spring, and that would be absolutely amazing. I anticipate that the timing of the repotting right as the new roots are coming out will mean that this will hopefully not be shocked by being cut in half, and it'll bloom as normal. So that said, this is a 2N plant. This is the small version of Cattleya amethystoglossa. So let's see. Let's do this. So you can see it's about the size. So my shoulder's here, and that's about halfway up the plant. I would say it's not quite 3 feet tall. And these are mature. This is a mature plant. I anticipate that this size of a bulb is about as big as it'll get. And it's been blooming for a number of years. So this is not only a mature division, but it's a very mature division. It's sent out a bunch of blooms over the past 3 years or so, and I chopped it up and sent a division that's not quite this large, but pretty close, maybe 4 or 5 bulbs to my friend in Indiana. Now I want you to compare this with the 4N or 3N behind me. I say it's 3N because it's from H&R, and their Cattleya amethystoglossas are intentionally triploid typically. So first of all, I want you to notice the size of this thing. In fact, I'm going to put this here at about the same level. So the top of the pot is basically next to the top of the pot of that one. This monstrous thing over here is, it'll be its 3rd blooming this spring in 2020. I'm going to walk back there and pick it up and show you the size of the pot that it's in right now. And I'm going to try and bring it over and show you that it's actually climbing out of this monstrous pot. I repotted it into this, I think it was last year, so 2018. And it's growing in 2 directions, and it's already basically too big. And let me show you something. So this monstrous pot is actually a water lily pot. And I'm not going to try and show you, but you can see these divots. Let's go like this. You can see these divots here. There's actually airspace in here, and that's why you can kind of have roots coming out the side. I've got very large media. I don't remember what I put down there, but it's probably something that's about this big, and then very, very large grade bark on top. So you'll notice that there's new roots coming out here. As I'm down here looking at this, I want you to notice that this thing's wobbling just a little bit. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 snapped off roots. That's probably just from wind. So what I'm going to do after this video, and I'm glad I made this video because now I know this, this thing needs to be staked. So these roots are getting close to the media. The wind blows and it snaps the roots right off. So I still have some good roots here. And what I want to do is I'm going to prop up a pot underneath it. And so that as this thing walks out of its pot, it's going to be growing into another pot so that when I eventually cut it, it will be, it will not be shocked, hopefully. So I'm hoping that I can get 2 to 4 growths in the next pot and then cut it maybe this time next year, hopefully. And I'll have a division that I can trade or sell. You know, when a plant is this big, though, sending that in the mail is not an easy task. So it's something to think about as you are thinking about buying these plants. Do I want a 2N? Do I have space for a Polyploid amethystoglossa? Do I have space for a pot that's this big and a plant that's this tall in my grow space, and a plant that requires you know, lots of sun, lots of heat, plenty of water? The other new growth on this is right here. The roots don't seem to be that affected by wobbling. I see 1 or 2 dead ones and then 5 or 6 really good ones. So nonetheless, I'm still going to stake this one. Another trick that you can do with your orchids, this is for all Cattleyas, is to not necessarily pull them out of their old pots. I don't know if you can see the plastic rim from this previous pot. As this plant was walking out of it, I simply put it into a larger pot and left the old one intact, and then added media around it. That's another really easy way to prevent shock if you know your media is good. If you have long-lasting orchiata bark or kiwi bark or whatever, if it's an inorganic media, it'll last forever. That's another trick that you can employ to minimize repotting shock. Or actually, if you're just simply taking a small pot that's too small and you're throwing the whole thing into a larger pot, there's no shock at all. So with that, I'm going to put this guy back on the cinder block. And I think that's it. I'm going to sign off. So again, this is Stephen Van Kampen-Lewis. I hope this was informational and informative, and I will talk to you later.